The next principle that I'd like to talk about, which is clearly associated with Shiva, is Svabhava. Svabhava, your inherent nature, your inherent character. Shiva epitomizes the autonomy of being himself, not trying to emulate anyone, not trying to be like anyone, understanding what he's all about and maintaining that and loving it and nourishing it. So this is something that I realized is very, very beautifully seen in Shiva. Over the eons, over the centuries, Shiva has not changed. He's practically unchanged. He still has the same kind of hair, dressed in the same kind of way. He still has, he's bare-chested, he still has the snakes slithering up and down. He's ash besmeared. We hear about Parvati condemning him at times when she gets angry with him. She says, look at you, you have ash on your body. He picks up the ash from the cremation grounds and he rubs it all over his body, and his body becomes completely white with the ash. Today, people who are Shaivites and who are worshippers, they do the same. They might pick up the bhasma, it's called bhasma, and put it on their forehead. But it's basically this whole idea of Shiva that everything goes away, everything disappears, and what can be more effective but the cremation ash that's there? And he picks it up and rubs it on his body to show how he's not bothered by this life, by death, by sadness, by anything. He's just detached from everything. But bhasma, it is something that many people within Hinduism, they would think that the bhasma of a dead body would be completely impure, would be completely polluted. But that is Shiva. That is his Svabhava, to put on the bhasma on his body. So you have long descriptions in the Purans where he is talking about how everyone who's a follower of Shiva should rub the bhasma on his body. Completely unique, completely original, completely him. Just like you see Shiva with the third eye. Why the third eye? No other god has a third eye. What kind of anatomical incorrectness is this to have a third eye over there on your face, on your head, on your forehead? But again, you have to go a little deep into the philosophy of Shiva to understand that even when his eyes, his two eyes, were shut in a playful, in a slightly flirty manner by his wife Parvati, the whole world plunged into darkness, and that's when a third eye appeared on his forehead, because Shiva should also be watchful. Shiva should also be watching the world. So he has a third eye. I mean, if you look at it, he has that hair which is strange. He has the third eye which is strange. He's ichthyophallic, which is strange. He wears tiger skin, which is strange. But basically this is his Svabhava, and he follows his Svabhava. When I look at myself, I also think that it's extremely important to understand what your basic inherent nature is. What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What are the impregnations in your mind that have been left behind from your childhood? And work with that. Somebody is very good at immediately taking up a job and earning a lot of money. Some people may have had a background where they need to study more and need to spend more time by themselves. Some people, it may be that they need to go into business and make a whole lot of money very fast because they've had a very deprived childhood. Each person should study their own personal Svabhava. Each person should see where are they coming from and work from there. Not necessarily going by what society is telling you. Society says, okay, by this age, by 24, a girl has to be married. Or by 27 or 26, a boy has to get married. Listen to your inner voice. See what your actual Svabhava is. The Svabhava will be formulated by impregnations which are left behind from your childhood. So what you've had as a child, you have to analyze that and say, okay, this is what I did, this is what I want to do, these are my ambitions that I want to fulfill, and go for it. And this is what I feel when I look at Shiva, that he could maintain his uniqueness, his unique character in the galaxy of gods, where all the gods were different. Whether you look at Ram, you look at Krishna, you look at Vishnu, all of them dressed very differently. All of them were beautifully attired all the time, not Shiva. All of them had attendants who were beautiful, not Shiva. Look at Shiva's attendants. They were Ganas. Who were the Ganas? Misshapen people. Somebody has a hunchback, somebody has only one eye, somebody doesn't have a head, somebody doesn't have any hair. All his Ganas who went with him who attended him all the time, they were all strange people. They were not anything that could be admired. And those are the kind of people who used to be his attendants and be with him and were faithful followers. He was never embarrassed. That was Shiva. That is him. That is his unique personality. He was not embarrassed by the clothes he wore. He was not embarrassed by the attendants that went with him. He was not embarrassed by anything. And that sort of like gives psychologically to me a great sense of autonomy, that each one of us can decide what our Svabhava is. We can decide, we can analyze, and we can pursue it. And this uniqueness will make us stand out in society. You may be overweight, you may be short, you may be very good at oratory, you may be very bad at writing. Just figure out what are your plus points, what are your strengths, just like Shiva did. So when I was very young, I was always the storyteller among us 5 children when we were growing up. I used to tell stories, I used to make up stories all the time. And even when I was punished and I was made to sit in a corner, my punishment was never bad, because all my brothers and sisters would surround me, because they did not want to be deprived of being told a story by me. And I would tell the story right there. And I realized that this is something that I like to do. I'm a bit of an entertainer, I feel. So even when I came into this, became a professor and became a writer, my idea of wanting to orate, wanting to talk, wanting to narrate stories has stayed with me. And that I would feel is part of my inherent Svabhava. And that is why I pursue the things that I do pursue. Or just like this, I like to make changes in people's lives. I found it was very nice when people would write to me over the years and say, when we heard you say this, it changed our lives, we looked at things differently. That is my inherent Svabhava. I have that streak in me, I have that trait in me, and so I'm pursuing it to this day. I think it's important that you do that rather than looking at somebody else and just copying them and saying, this is the right way to be and I'm going to be that way. And who else can epitomize it and manifest it better than Shiva? Shiva, the unique God, Shiva, the paradoxical God, Shiva, the very, very unusual and strange God. Very often he's called a strange God, but it doesn't stop anyone from worshipping him and liking him and wanting to be somewhat like him in his autonomy. An important principle connected with Shiva, which is relevant to all of us in our lives, is Sayam. Sayam, Santulam, Svabhava, which means basically balance. Maintaining balance in one's life. Balance is extremely important. Sometimes, most times, people underestimate what it can do to you if you lead an imbalanced life. And an imbalance can be seen in many different forms. So we should all try to balance everything in our lives. Difficult as it may be, training of the mind can help you with that. But let's just look at Shiva. How does he lead his life? He's supposed to be the destroyer. He is connected with destruction. Here I'd like to say destruction is not bad when you look at it with Shiva, because metaphysically he's destroying evil. He's destroying the evil, inner evil, outer evil, evil in the world, evil within ourselves, the ego, ahamkar. He destroys that. And it's only with destruction that you can then have something renewed. It's only with destruction that you can create something new. So destruction is not always seen as a negative force. Definitely not when connected with Shiva. But when Shiva has this destructive part of him, he also then balances it with creation and with preservation. After all, is Shiva not the great creator? He's the one you see as the great creator when he is combined with Shakti, when he is combined with the female force that is Parvati. That's how regeneration, and that's how reproduction, and that's how creation actually takes place. But more than that, we can see it in the Ardhanarishwara form. Ardhanarishwara. Half female, half Ishwar, that is Shiva. You can see it in his form, you can see it in the murtis and the statues. It's a beautiful fusion of the male and female principle. Nothing is more emblematic of fusion and harmony and balance than this image of Shiva. He has both the forces equally blended, equally fused. There's a beautiful myth that tells us about the Ardhanarishwara form. It must have been very strange for worshippers to see a god who is half female. and half male. And the mythographers created a lovely myth to make people understand it. The myth is funny, the myth has a sense of humor. It seems that Shiva and Parvati, both of them, are extremely powerful gods. She's a very powerful goddess. She has, in a way, her own ego, and he's, of course, a very powerful god. Both of them usually would stand together, and all the worshippers would come one by one and pay obeisance to them. They would circumambulate them, what is called pradakshina. They would do a pradakshina of Shiva and Parvati, and they would move away. So then comes the most devout follower of Shiva, a sage called Bhringi. Sage Bhringi comes and he sees the two of them standing there side by side. He doesn't want to circumambulate Parvati because he is a pugnacious, a stubborn follower, a very loyal follower of Shiva and Shiva alone. So he just comes and he circumambulates Shiva and he goes away. This upsets Parvati. She says, am I not a great goddess? Why is he doing that? So she also goes and does tapas. I've talked earlier about how important concentration is. Tapas is a kind of going inwards and doing some penance with yourself. She does that. She goes away into the jungles, into the mountains, and for many years she does hard penance. And after she does hard penance, Shiva, being Mahadev, he asks her, what do you want? You've done so much of austerities. What do you want from me? Ask. You can ask for me any vow, anything, and I will fulfill it for you. So she says, I love you so much. I want to be half your body. I want to be fused with you. I want to be conjoined with you. So he says, so be your wish will be granted. And the two of them become one. Again, the two of them are standing there, full assembly. All the gods and goddesses are coming and paying their obeisance. Again, Bhringi comes. And when Bhringi comes, he sees the two of them together. Do you know, look at the myth, how cute it is. He goes without paying his obeisance. He goes and in turn, he does his penance, he does his austerities. He becomes a bee. Bhringi actually means like a beetle or bee. He becomes a little bug and he comes back and he bores a hole in between Shiva and Parvati and circumambulates only Shiva. And then Parvati, she says, my God, what a great God, what a great bhakt you are, what a great devotee, what a great follower you are. And she in fact bows to him because he's such a great devotee. And this is the story this is why she wanted to fuse with him. She was actually irritated that Bhringi was behaving in this manner. But this is just a story which keeps people entertained and also makes people see the beauty of being conjoined, the beauty of seeing two cults, two strong deities, two strong cults, the cult of Shakti, that is Parvati, the cult of Shiva, being fused together. And simultaneous worship has to be there for both of them. You can't just worship Shiva, you have to at the same time worship Parvati. And that is the balance between the two. That is what you see in Ardhanarishwara form. And that is what we should try to bring into our lives. But before I go a little bit more into our lives, a little more about the celestial world, because Shiva is not only fused and not only equaled with Parvati, who is his wife, but we also have the Harihar image, in which both Shiva and Vishnu are fused, and there's a wonderful balance between the two. There are beautiful sayings, there are beautiful writings and inscriptions in which they say, we pay obeisance to that God, half of whom is wearing the Jata Mukuta, half of who is wearing a beautiful jeweled crown. We pay obeisance to that God, one who has 2 eyes, one who has 3 eyes. We pay obeisance to that God, one who is full of the beautiful silken robes, the other wearing the tiger skin. We pay obeisance to that God, one who is involved in destruction, the other one